Hi everybody and welcome to this free film school video and we're very lucky today to be talking to Mthunzi Ramphele, who is joining us from LA via Zoom. We're all via Zoom now, but we are like dealing with big time differences, and it's really exciting to be talking to you in LA in between all the pitching you're doing to all these
Yes.
amazingly huge companies. So when I first met Matt, he was a screenwriting student at UCT, and he was working on a project that he's taken all the way to LA. He's gone to LA. He's been working on all sorts of other exciting stuff, and he is busy pitching right now to a bunch of big names. And so we're very lucky to have him here today to give us his experience and his best tips on pitching a script. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So Mthunzi, can
Uh,
you just give us a sense of who you are and what you've been up to?
yeah. Absolutely. Well, hello, I'm Mthunzi Ramphele. Yeah, I studied at UCT, the film school, got into the screenwriting track, which kind of begun this whole journey that has got me here so far. Yeah, so I did the screenwriting track, and then I did my honors in the film production thing. And then I went to USC, which is the #1 film school in the world, and I was a George Lucas scholar. So that's where so that's how I found my way to LA. And then through that process, because of the exit program and because of the resources from the university, and of course you're gonna have to work hard yourself, I was able to make various meaningful relationships and connections, which kind of got me to be fully repped. Which got me in partnership with Starburns Industries, who's responsible for Rick and Morty and Lisa and stuff like that. So they're the production company that's on the show right now, which is dope. And then, yeah, through that, now we're pitching essentially to distributors. So that'll be like, well, our first string were the streamers, right? So HBO Max, Hulu, Netflix, etc. So it's been really, really cool, really exciting. But also kind of, kind of terrifying, because this is the thing that we're doing is a not an objective thing. So even the advice that I give you, hey, could be wrong. So yeah, so the show that I'm actually pitching, I started writing it at DCT, and it's called Modern Monsters. And it's essentially it's like an allegory for post-apartheid South Africa. So it deals with those sort of racial class tension stuff, but it's also it's an animated show, and it's about monsters. Essentially, that's the metaphor. Monsters are going to be the oppressed people, and humans are the non-oppressed people. Uh, Well, the show itself will be better than what I just pitched. But yeah. So yeah.
So
Yep.
thanks, Mthunzi. That's great. And I'm just like so starstruck by what you have done in the intervening years since I knew you well at UCT. So it's like quite amazing the journey that you've been on and how hard you've had to work to go on this particular journey. And now you're at this like really exciting critical point. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, well, the main thing I want to ask you is like if you could go back in time to yourself, um, when you were first conceptualizing this project, and what would your advice be to basically any young person who's learning how to pitch? What is your best tip for pitching your ideas?
This is the best advice that I've ever gotten, and I think it's important moving forward. Is your idea? It's not anyone's job to get you or to get your idea. It's your job to make people get you or get your idea. So, I mean, I got a lot of pushback for Modern Monsters when I was like here for like years. And if I just sort of gave up on the project, then I would be back in South Africa. I would not have the show, and that would just be a nothing. So it's this thing of you have to trust your instincts, certainly. But again, how do you know? This is not an objective thing. So you got to trust your instincts. You got to trust your taste and your voice, because that's the thing that you can't learn is taste and voice. And that the most important thing about the pitching process is essentially what you're doing is you're selling the idea of a show that you've already seen all of to someone that hasn't seen anything. You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, have you seen Game of Thrones? It's crazy. So you can't get into the minutia of it or the specific stuff that you love because, oh, there's dragons later. Well, who cares? But you need to be like, no, this is exactly what the thing that you're gonna love about the show is. So pitching is essentially is the art of communicating a show that no one has seen but you, and making people want to watch it.
That's just such amazing advice. And it's so interesting because I think often when one thinks of pitching, one thinks of like the performance, the show, the kind of like standing up in front of people, which is, I think, the scary part of it. But, or lots of things are scary about it. But actually, you're kind of taking it back to something much more fundamental, which is like relying upon your own voice and kind of trusting your idea. And I mean, I imagine it takes a huge amount of like inner sort of fortitude to be able to kind of stick to your guns about something you know is good, you know it's got the legs, and people don't, you know, necessarily know it. So thank you. And then also it also makes me think, you know, often when people have ideas about stories or whatever, it's so hard to be able to predict what people don't know. So how do you kind of figure out what it is you need to tell people?
Wowzers. And this is such a good, because again, you know, the reason I got so much pushback is because people just don't know what apartheid even is. In that sense. Like there's just no context. Like 25 or whatever, 27 years ago, it was just like criminal to be a Black person in the wrong place. No, that would never happen. Like, so it's like, now it happened. And advice that Ian actually gave me was like, the worst reason to tell a story is just because it happened. So you can't just be like, no, it happened, because so what? So what it is comps are gonna help you a lot with that. Having something, because people describing a complex idea by saying it's kind of like this, that's just a shorthand, and that's what language is. That's what language is, trying to communicate the information that's in here to another person in a way that they can sort of see it. What's also insane though is, so that is that thing of like not being able to know what people don't know. And because you're so intimate with the project, because it's your project that you've been sitting with for years and years and years, you often, and I found myself even with this last round of doing the notes for the new pitch, I found myself just like saying stuff without giving, like making a joke that you would need a certain amount of knowledge to even get the joke. It's rough, kids. It's rough. So you literally have to, you need to pitch to as many strangers or people that aren't familiar with your idea as possible, or to describe it. And that's where this, and you'll get into this, but like the elevator pitch is so important, because that is for 30 seconds when you walk into an elevator and Judd Apatow's in there and you say, holy crap, I have this idea. You got until he reaches his floor to tell him what it is. So conciseness is key. Over explaining, you don't want to do that, even though that's what I'm doing right now. And just, and it's just being able to, it's weird for me to even describe, but yeah, to force someone to see the show that you see. Without even existing. So
it kind of takes empathy and vision mixed together.
Yep. And so with the modern, what again, which is also interesting and why we've gotten so much attention lately, is the apocalypse happened. So animation is the only you know that apocalypse. So because animation is the only viable production, is the only viable way to produce content right now, that was a huge deal. But at the same time, you know, the big Black Lives Matter movement, which has been going on, made like Black people cool again. So I had this show that, again, like as little as like 2-3 years ago, where people were like, this is never going to be made. Now it's like everyone's like, this is exactly what we're looking for. It's this exact thing. So this is more of like an industry thing, not a pitching thing, but luck and timing.
But you've got to be there, right? You've got to be there to take the luck. You know, when it comes around to you, I imagine, you know, if you hadn't persevered and made the connections that you'd made and like stuck to your vision and everything, when the sort of things align, you're there, I imagine.
You have to be able to hop on it. Exactly right. Because I did even throughout the production so the initial pitching process. Well, I'll just tell you the sort of the process with the show in general, which is first it's the
Ooh, you're frozen. I don't know if that's me or you. Man.
document, and essentially what that is like a show Bible,
Mm-hmm.
but a show Bible that's less intense. It's a show Bible for. Oops. Oh,
Sorry,
okay. You popped up.
I'm busy shouting to my boyfriend. I'm like, help me. My
Oh no. It's okay. I'll stop the sentence over. So, and so the pitch document is essentially all this. You essentially get your show down as as much information as you can. It's like a less intense show Bible, I guess, is the best way to describe that. Now, in that what I focused on at least was inspiration, so the context, the world, because the people, especially with an animated show, people need to know where they are before
Yes.
you're talking about what it is, right?
Yes.
So you set up the world, you set up the rules,
Mm.
then it's the essential the pattern that each episode will take in general. Because animation is often quite episodic, people expect something like, oh, generally speaking, this is how an episode will shake out. But as we all know, like serialization is the big thing now. Thank God in animation. So you don't have to reset every freaking week. Stuff can have permanent consequences. Then it's characters, very important. And then pilot, season one, sort of run through, and then ideas for further seasons. So then through that, we sent that out to a couple of production companies, including Starburns Industries, who Rick and Morty, and Melissa, Titmouse, who did Big Mouth and stuff like that, and a couple of other places. And this is when it's really important, because I went to a lot of these places, and the bigger names, like the more commercial animation houses, were like, yeah, we like the idea of the show, but we want to take out all the political stuff. So they basically wanted to take the teeth out of it. And I was like, no. And like, yeah, I would have got more money, but if that happened, then the show would not be what it is, and I would not be able to even write it truly. So Starburns was such a perfect partner because they got what I was trying to do, and they just added more value to that. So another thing, again, this is more of an industry thing, a show thing, is to make sure that your team only adds, and that is they're interested in showing your show or producing your show, and not their idea of what your show is supposed to be. So then you do that. So then now that we're partnered up with Starburns, it's easy to get meetings after that, right? So then they develop the pitch deck in a professional capacity. So then they commission original art and do all that good stuff and zhuzh it up for distributors and streamers and HBO and all those good things. And then after that, they essentially, you go in and all they have is your log line. They have 3 sentences about your show, and then it's your job. Yeah. And it's your job to be like, all right, well, here's everything. You got 20 minutes? Cool. I'll try not to bore you. And then after that, you would send the pitch deck as a leave behind, because you're pitching to the exec in the room, but the leave behind is for their boss, right?
Okay.
The person. So yeah, what you want is the exec to pitch you to their boss, but then you also want to show, I have thought this through. I wasn't just rapping.
That's so fantastic, and it's such great insight into a process that I think can seem quite opaque when you've never been through it before.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much. And then I suppose like final words are like, I suppose my final question is like, how do you deal with the anxiety of it? Like, I'm getting anxiety just thinking about what you've been doing.
What's cool, or what has been really cool for me, is my team, right? So when I'm in the pitch, it's not me alone, or at least now, it's not me
Yeah.
alone. I got the producers, I got all the Starburns. And yeah, you're gonna be carrying the ball for 98% of the time. It's your show, it's your world.
Yes.
But they're gonna be able to hop, like Starburns tackles all the art stuff, and the actual mechanics of production and things. I don't know a damn thing about animation production, and I don't need to because they do. For instance, when we had the HBO Max pitch, they just loved the actual pitch so much that they didn't have any questions about the actual show. They just said, "Are you guys COVID ready? How are you able to produce this thing?" And then they were able to take that ball and run.
Yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to yesterday, which was I would say it's a rough pitch, but not a bad pitch. It was a rough pitch because the pitches before, people were just sort of generally just into the idea of the show. Like they were just like, okay, cool, buy it, see what you're doing.
Yes.
It's black stuff, cool, gotcha. But 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 with FX, because I think that the team is one of the very few pitches I've been into where there were like no white men, and the team is very like ethnic. They understood the show already on an intimate level, so the questions were deeper and more involved than I could have imagined, which was obviously a fun and fantastic conversation to be into. But it's also overwhelming to have to commit to decisions, like where they say, "What's happening at the end of the season?" You're like, "Ah, crap, I don't know." I mean, you do, of course, but you didn't.
But expecting to pitch that, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, you want to know the whole thing because that's going to be 3 hours. So, in those, so it's important. Obviously, like, be very intimate with your show. Have your script. Have the information that generally gives the idea of it, right? Because you're not selling the minutia. The minutia is what's going to make your show like super successful and have big hordes of fans, but the minutia is not what sells to HBO or Netflix. But you need to know the minutia, and you need to intimately understand your world so that when they do ask those questions, like one of the great questions I got asked was why I made the subjugated groups monsters and the humans the oppressors, as opposed to the other way around. I was like, because that's the exact point, right? The word monster is a bad thing, A, and B, monsters are by definition almost always more powerful and more capable than humans, and yet they were still able to be subjugated, which if we look at like South Africa, like the population was entirely black, and yet we were able to be subjugated like for so long. It's insane to me. And anyway, I'm getting too excited about the show itself. And to that end, passion. There's nothing that replaces your passion and people seeing that you care about the show, and that you're not precious, you're not detrimentally precious about the show, that you're willing to hear stuff and collaborate. Because the best thing that can happen in a pitch is if an exec starts pitching you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They start coming with their ideas, because then they've already kind of they've engaged. They now have like a horse in this race, so to speak.
That's
so yeah.
fantastic. It's so interesting and so exciting to hear what you'll be doing. I think I'm going to have to stop there just for the sake of length. There's so many more interesting things. I'm sure you
can do more of these, absolutely. Yes. About different parts of the production process as I experienced them in real time. Yes. Because I don't know. This is my first show. I don't know what I'm doing.
I think it's just such an amazing thing to have this insight into this journey, and the way that you've managed to stick to your guns with the story and take it all the way to this point is going to be so inspiring to everyone who watches this. So thank you so much. Yeah.
You.